Da-na-na. Ready for this?
Oh, yeah.
Kung Fu Fighting. Da-na-na-na-na-dun-dun-dun. What was that?
I was wondering why the Frisbee was getting bigger. Then it hit me.
Huh. That's bad.
What's the difference between a hippo and a Zippo? One is really heavy, and the other one is a little lighter.
That's pretty good. Okay, roll the intro.
Okay.
Put my own flair on there. I can't do that. That's as best I can. I can't do it. You know,
Are you doing it with your throat or your tongue?
my throat. That's my tongue.
Golly.
All right, welcome to Pronetoponder, everybody. That should be the intro.
All right. Okay, so we've been off for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, just taking a little break from podcasting. I think we're both pretty busy for the most part.
Yeah, I know. After the last podcast, I don't know. So I'm getting mixed vibes here, right?
Yeah.
The people who listen to the podcast, they come to me and they're like, "Wow, I love when you guys talk about the movies and stuff, and I love when you do the movie reviews, and I love when you guys just talk about something that it really sounds like you enjoy talking about, right?" But we get like barely anyone listening to it.
Yeah.
The other ones that are like talking about the heavy stuff.
The heavy fanny.
Like the depression episode and the aliens episode.
Mm-hmm. Which is surprising.
Yeah, mostly.
And when we mean a lot, we mean like 40 people.
Yeah.
Or like 40 streams. But
yeah.
That's a lot for us.
But it's more than,
It's more than 10.
More than 10.
Less than 100, but I'll take it.
That is math.
Fourth grade math.
So I figured today.
Yeah.
There's no new movies out or anything like that. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing really to talk about there unless it's old movies, which I do think we'll do eventually because we love talking about them. It's just maybe not every episode.
Yeah.
So a heavy thing that I thought we could talk about that both of us have been affected by in different ways.
Say in the same time. Okay, ready?
1,
1, 2, 3. Bag
being
of
a
rice.
Nickelback roadie. What?
Oh, that's heavy? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Keeping the weight of that band on your back, basically. That's pretty good.
That is very good. Okay, no, I figured we could talk about divorce.
Yeah.
Last week was my, I don't really like calling it an anniversary, but
Divorce anniversary.
it was like a divorce anniversary of sorts.
Yeah.
Last week was when my ex-wife and I decided that we were going to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those feelings come rushing back every year around the same season, I don't want to compare it to PTSD, but it's kind of on that spectrum, right?
Right.
And it's kind of on that spectrum. It's kind of around that kind of feeling where something dramatic happens in your life, whether it be good or bad, and you start to have all of those same feelings rush back to you.
Right. It puts you back into that hole.
Yeah. And that happened to me last week.
Oh, really?
And I was thinking, hey, like maybe we could talk about divorce. And then I got home and I'm like, hey, we could do the podcast. And then both of us were like, I'm just not feeling it today.
Yeah.
I think it's just because of a lot of those feelings.
Yeah.
So I've been affected by divorce because I've been through one.
Mm-hmm.
How were you affected by it?
Well, I went through your divorce technically with you.
That's true.
But I also, and we'll get to my side of the story, but my parents are also divorced too. So, yeah. So I just, it was hard because I was in your wedding. I love this woman as a friend, and she made you happy, and being a part of that wonderful day with you guys was really awesome. And thinking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, like it makes sense, like why it had to happen and why it happened, because there were so many, like when it started happening, you're like, oh, there's so many signs that clear to it, but in the moment, you're just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like this
you're trying to think to yourself, okay, maybe it's not that.
Right.
Maybe it'll change. Maybe it's just a season of life.
Right.
And then it's not.
No. Yeah. And it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just weird because it was like I really cared about her and I really wanted this to work for you guys. But having already gone through and lived through a divorce with my parents and seeing how like one day they're very loving to each other and next they're just like, nah, I just don't care for this person.
Yeah.
And it just brought back those feelings. And I just remember I was working at another gym and I was working out and we had like a group chat with our band and you were like, hey, can you guys send us some prayers? Like we're going through some stuff. I thought she was sick because I knew she had some health problems, but turns out she was obviously, doing some,
she was fucking other guys.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't want to say it. So she was going through those motions. So I called you and I was like, "What's going on?" And then you kind of broke it down to me, and I was like, "What? Like what?" That's like it blew my mind. I was like, you were on like a vacation together, like 2 weeks before that.
Yeah.
And or like a month or so before that. And I was like kind of taken back, and I immediately was like, I think I told you on that phone call or the one after, I can't remember. But I was like, you might need to prepare yourself for divorce. Like it's kind of getting down that road, and it's kind of scary because you don't want that option. You want it to you want to figure it out and make it work. But when a situation like that, it's like I don't even know if you can recover from something like that. And I applaud you for trying. Like I think it was worth trying. I think you tried a little longer than you needed to, but like 6 months. But that's just me. But and I get that. I totally understand. You guys were together for 7 years, and it was hard. But I ended up moving. So you two were living in Nashville.
Yep.
At the time, going to school, and I decided, well, I got fired from my gym job. Might as well just uproot my life and move away for a few months. So I moved to Nashville. And I slept on an air mattress for 6 months in your apartment, which I think we had some of the most fun times there.
I don't know if I've ever formally thanked you for doing what you did because, yes, I had people come visit me, but nobody ever came to like physically be with me during all of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have got through it if it wasn't to have somebody to come home to every day.
Yeah.
Even if we got into screaming matches because we were both going through our own stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I want to say.
I appreciate you.
You picked that up in Nashville, didn't you?
What?
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Down Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro.
I'm a firm believer that no one should do life alone. And it doesn't have to be a wife, a spouse, or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. I mean, I don't believe anybody should go through life alone. Like, there were times in my life where I didn't have anyone to go to that would be there for me. And I made a pact with myself that I would never do that. I would never let anybody go through what I went through because it's, especially in a divorce because I went through a divorce in a sense by myself. So many different scenarios in my life where I had to go through stuff by myself, and I decided, what, I'm not going to let anybody do that because there was just so many bad scenarios where I wish I just would have had that one person be there for me. Yeah, so I there was a lot of ups and down days. Like you said, we had a lot of screaming matches, but it's because I wasn't paying for rent. So I wasn't paying for my bills. I was literally driving pizzas or delivering pizzas in a Ford F-150.
Not the wisest.
Not the wisest. So it wasn't the best choice. But hey, we still had fun.
We did.
We got
had a good time.
So fat.
That was the heaviest I've ever been.
Yeah, I was 250 when we got back, and I was like
238.
This was bad. This was bad. So,
from the perspective of somebody who has seen divorce, mine and your parents and other people's that you may know, there's two, I think, different views of thought here. One is, okay, well, don't share about it because it's only one half of the story and it might not be your business. It's just depressing to talk about, so don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side that says, well, somebody might be going through the same kind of thing, and it might help for them to know that they're not the only person going through something like this, or to ever have gone through something like this.
Yeah.
So what's your perspective on that?
Well, it happened at a very young age. I think I was in like the 3rd grade, so you're like, 8 or 9.
Yeah. So
I don't remember a whole lot. That was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not crazy to think about. And it's hard to think. I do have like a couple, flashbacks of fighting and things like that. But it took a while for me to kind of take my own sort of perspective on it because I didn't really know. And I think that's because my mom didn't tell me why for a while. Because she ended up I just remember as a kid, like I used to have a futon in my room. It's a futon with a bunk bed. It was pretty awesome. But it was all metal. So, like, if you touched it, freeze your leg off. Or if you fell off, you hit hard metal.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool. So she stayed in my room for an entire year, and we lived in a small townhouse. And it wasn't too small, but it was tiny for 4 people and a guy that, my dad was still trying to find a job, or he was trying to find an apartment, and he just, we didn't grow up very wealthy, so he was struggling to find an apartment or save money. I don't know. I never really knew what the circumstance was, but my mom stayed in my room for an entire year. There was that to kind of accommodate. Yeah, it took about 7 or 8 years after that to kind of figure out why it happened. Having still kind of doing my normal thing with my dad, hanging out with him, going to his house, like we'd watch movies and things like that, but nothing too crazy. And then kind of figuring out why it happened and realizing that he was, an addict and choosing certain drugs over a family. And I think it is a good thing to share, because for me, it's like I know exactly what not to be if I do have a family and want to provide for a family and be things like that. And it's hard to think about like going into the future not being that. And but I think it is good to talk about it, especially with people who've gone through it, because you can rise out of it. It's different for you because you went through the physical divorce. Like, you didn't really have any kids, or you kind of separated some items, and like, it was
pretty fresh in the marriage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of ties to that.
Right.
Yeah.
You basically just left her in Nashville and moved back. Like, it was just like that. So, but with kids involved, it's a lot harder because of the physical and the emotional ramifications that come out of it. So, and don't get me wrong, like, I want to say that I'm a lot better than my dad. I wouldn't say I am my dad, but I've kind of lived with that like hole and pit, because I didn't really grow up with like a father figure that would teach me these things, and I just kind of go with my certain perspectives, and it changes a family dynamic. We didn't really eat around the table as a family, like a mother, a father, or, kids, whatever. The first time that I actually like did that was actually at your parents' house, with you and your mom and your dad, and it was like a Sunday afternoon, and we ate there. I hardcore had a panic attack, because I was like, I don't know what's going on. I've never done this before. This is so weird. Because I used to eat dinner with TV on, and that was like what I did every night, because my mom was working 2 jobs, and my sister was at college, so we never really did that. So it was so weird to kind of relearn family dynamics, and to learn like what a father does for his family and things like that. So it's interesting.
Did you find yourself looking to other people like to fill that role as father figure, or did it sort of just happen naturally?
It sort of just happened, but I was kind of like, I don't need no daddy, like kind of moment. Like for a while, I just was like, I just, my dad was never there for me. Why would I mean, I don't want to say he wasn't, because that's just lying. I mean, he was like a buy your love kind of love. I'm going to buy you this, I'm going to buy you that, I'm going to buy you this, I'm going to buy you that. I'm like, that's not what I want. I want someone to teach me things and to show me things. And when he would, it was like, oh, you're crazy. That's why we don't talk to you. Like, he's like, Sarah Palin's going to save the world. I'm like, oh. So yeah. So I like, it's a touchy, it's kind of a weird subject, because of, he was still, I still saw him. Don't get me wrong. Like, he never like dropped out of the picture completely, and he tried, but it was just like that. Like, he just tried to buy his love into my life, and to my certain experiences. But his attitude was like, I kind of have to. Like, I got pulled into this because of you, and he makes you like pity himself or pity him, and it's like, that's not what I want to be around. To go back to what your question said, it kind of grew. I didn't really feel like I got like a father figure until sort of Nick's dad, our old youth pastor, and not really like in the place where like, let me guide you along, my son, and teach you the ways of the force. No, it's not that. It was sort of just like a teaching moment, like here and there. Like, I wouldn't say there was one father figure that like took me under his wing and taught me how to fish. No, it was not.
From an outside perspective, it seems like you had several men like fill that role. Especially like with 5130.
Oh yeah. Even your dad. Yeah.
It's cool to see how that sort of happens naturally when you surround yourself with good people.
Oh yeah.
Because
absolutely.
it's heartbreaking to see, so many people today have to grow up without a dad, and they purposely surround themselves with not the best people and not the greatest crowds, and nobody's filling that role.
Right.
because nobody intentionally wants to fill that role.
Right.
It's like if you surround yourself by good people, whether it's a father figure, a motherly figure. What is that called? A mother figure?
Yeah, sure.
Is that
a motherly figure? Sure.
Or just a good friend.
Right.
Like, you're not going to get that unless you surround yourself with those kind of people, because those good people want to intentionally be there for you. Mm-hmm. Which, is why I think it's important to talk about it. Because if you could be man enough to say, yeah, I'm not in the best place right now.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
If those people love you, they're going to come in and they're going to step in. They're going to be like, what can I do to help? And it might not be what can I do to help. It might be, well, get your shit together and figure it out.
Yeah.
And everyone needs different kinds of
love and stuff.
Of love. And sometimes I need that. Sometimes I need someone who could be like, oh, are you okay?
Yeah.
Sometimes we need both.
Well, and that's what's crazy about kind of growing up as men, if we can talk about that. But growing up as men, at least for me, I mean, I grew up with mostly just women, so I'm very in tune with my sensitive side. So I sort of understand women a little bit better. I actually feel comfortable talking to females about things because I just grew up with my mom and my sister, and that was just sort of my kind of go-to kind of thing. So I don't really relate very much to men in a sense. Like now, like what I am interested in is more popular nowadays, and that's like movies, comic books, superheroes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's like more kind of mainstream, which is good. Yeah. And so I can relate to a lot more people, but I didn't grow up liking sports. I mean, I played sports, but I never really liked it.
Did anybody? Really?
Right. I mean, it's kind of pointless. Like I had a couple of coworkers that I used to work with that would just talk about sports, and I'm like, this is literally the stupidest conversation I've ever heard of. You think, Marshawn Lynch is going to do really well this weekend? I don't know. If he's on cocaine, probably, I guess. I don't know. Like, it just, anyway. Not saying he's on cocaine. I'm just, it's a joke. But, yeah, so you sort of kind of grow up with a stigma that men are supposed to be, like, be a man, like
must be swift as
a coursing river. So yeah, they there's that stigma, and there's nothing wrong with being that. Like you can be, and that's sort of like that is a type of man, and I don't want to like underplay that, and I don't want to overplay it either, because I think men, toxic masculinity is a thing. Men can be pushed into being like, you need to be hard as nails and tougher than tough, but it's also like, we live in a world full of insecurities nowadays, and men have insecurities, and having not grown up with a daddy, like I've got some daddy issues, so it's really affected my life in that regard, and I do think like men deserve to cry, and I think men deserve to have feelings, and in a way like this where it's like you can share these feelings. And I think you and I have gone through so many different things with like 5130 and different groups that we've done with men, and just talk about these things, because it is so weird to talk about these things, and to know that there's a community out there that's like, we can talk about these things, no judgment, we're not going to give you an opinion. If you just want to talk, well, listen, because it's so weird. And I remember I was talking to a coworker, and I was like, yeah, man, I used to like in 8th grade, I used to cry every day. And he's like, you used to cry? He's like, why would you cry? I'm like, because I got bullied a lot, and I didn't really have somebody to help me stand up for that stuff. And they're like, oh my God, like, why would you cry? Like, stand up for yourself. I'm like, I didn't learn. Like, I never knew how to. My mom, bless her heart, was always there, but never really kind of taught me how to do it. I just kind of had to learn it on my own, or just take it, Yeah,
that's tough. Quick, shameless plug. If anyone out there is looking to be around a community of guys who, just want to be able to talk about stuff going on in their life with no judgment, and just sort of get through it, look up 5130 Ministries, Project 5130. They might be able to help you out.
Yeah.
With my story, going back to that first question, I do think it's really important to talk about it.
Yeah. Sorry. Just remember this. We went to a singles night.
Yes, we did.
At a church.
Yes, we did.
And this is with our buddy Nick. Back when the three of us were all single, he was like, hey, like I go to this church. It's in like, the upper north side of Chicago, and they do a singles night.
We drove like an hour and 10 minutes.
Oh, we drove far. they're like, it's a singles night. Like, there's going to be like hundreds of people there. We were like,
And there was.
And there was like 50-year-old people. So they like so we get into this church and there's like 100 people from all different ages. And they sort of like broke everybody up into like, like 18 to 25 and then 26 to 30 and, so on and so on and so on. And they put us like in groups. So I just want to point out, there was probably like for the 18 to 25, I think we're definitely in our 20s at the time. From like 18 to 25, there was probably about 50 guys and 15 girls.
Yeah.
So it was like
our odds were not great.
No, and so we were like, okay, like we'll kind of keep an open mind, and they're like, well, yeah, they're gonna have a sermon.
And we were all still fat.
Oh yeah, we were completely and utterly unfuckable. Nick still is. Anyway, sorry.
Tell that to his wife.
Yeah, the only guy married. So we get into this group and they do like a sermon, but the sermon was about divorce and why it's okay in the church. And I'm like, none of us have really been through this except for this guy. And then they gave us like literally 10 minutes. The whole hour that we were there was all about the divorce. Yeah. And they're like, all right, we're going to split everybody into groups, but you have to sit by people you don't know. And I was like, Christopher, you're not leaving my side. Like, I'm not going to go through this alone.
Let's just pretend like we don't know each other.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, what's your name? You're like, James. I'm like, my name's Jim. That's weird. So we sit through this whole thing, and then we like kind of talked about divorce.
Well, we're surrounded by a bunch of, like Colin said, like 20-some-year-olds.
Yeah.
And we're going around this big circle of like 20 people now. And everyone's like, has anyone like directly been affected by it? And I'm like the only one that raises my hand. I'm like, I was divorced 6 months ago. And everyone's like, what?
Yeah, like, huh?
Yeah, it was so weird.
So then there was like, and then they're like, all right, you guys have like 10 minutes to like mingle. I was like, what even was this? Was this a divorce convention? Because why was
strange.
There? Yeah, I never wanted to do anything like that ever again. It was so stupid.
My favorite part of that night was during the 10 minutes of mingling.
Yeah.
Colin and I, mostly myself, I was just there as a wingman. I wasn't really ready to dive into anything.
Yeah.
Colin was sort of, doing the other wing. And we were just there because, Nick was super desperate at the time. Nick's like, all right, I want to go talk to this girl. This is a attractive woman.
Yeah.
Somebody at least 6 points above Nick.
Nick's a 2. A strong 2.
And
I'm an asshole. I'm sorry. Nick, I know you listen to these. You can stop. I'm sorry.
We love you, bud. You got to come on the podcast, defend yourself. That's all. So Colin and I are standing in the corner, and Nick's like, all right, I'm going to go talk to this girl. And we're like, all right, we'll be your wingman. We'll just stay right here, which is not the way that usually goes.
No, yeah, we're supposed to like walk up there and be like, this is Nick.
So he walks up to this girl. He talks for the whole 10-minute mingle, and he comes back, and we look like, we're talking, we're laughing the whole time, me and Colin, and we see him start to come back, and we're like, man, it looks like it went well. Yeah. And he gets up to us, and the smile fades from his face, and we're like, what's wrong? And he's like, she had the personality of a wet carrot.
Which I don't even know what that means, but
it paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does paint a picture, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Hey, because you look at a wet carrot, you're like, meh.
Yeah.
What's the peanut butter on it? It tastes real good.
Yeah, but it's hard because it's wet, and you can't always get as much peanut butter as you want when
the
carrot's wet.
5 years later, we figured it out.
Yeah, wow, Nick, you're really good at analogies about carrots.
Yeah, it makes us figure it out 5 years later.
Back to my original thing,
not to interrupt
talking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just go for, divorce and relationships and all that kind of stuff, but I do think it's really important to talk about stuff because being, 20 years old going through this, long story short, my wife decided she wanted an open marriage and told me, well, I'm already having an open marriage, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I'm not really willing to do that, nor did I ever want that. And you also told me you didn't want that. She said, well, I changed my mind. I'm like, okay, well, I don't think that's how this works.
Yeah.
So, we do the whole separation thing. We do the trying to work it out thing. We do the whole couples counseling thing, which I always went to alone. She never showed up for.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to work if she doesn't want to play her part.
Right.
It clearly was like she didn't want to.
Right. That's fine. Live your life the way you want to live your life. Just don't tie me in and then say, well, I'm changing everything. and now I want to cut you out.
And well, looking back on that you have a more, you have more salt in your bones. That again, I applaud you for trying, and you were trying to make it work, but there was, towards the end of it, it was almost like you were dragging her along.
I was, man. I was being as, passive isn't the right word, because I was being very passive towards her.
Right.
But I was actively trying to rescue the relationship.
Right.
Right? Like, I was doing everything that I feel like I could be doing. Like, I was giving her space when she wanted space, but I was pouring my heart out every time I could have the option to do that. I was doing the couples counseling without her because she never showed up.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing everything that I could, talking to her family, talking to her parents, her brothers, and everything like that. And then she threatened me, like, immediately. She's like, heard you talk to my parents. I'm like, well, yeah, like, they're my family too.
Yeah.
And she's like, you can't do that. I'm like, why? She's like, I'm going to divorce you if you do that. I'm like, okay. Well,
Yeah.
and then I started to be a little more passive about it because I didn't want her to just leave.
Right. Because she sort of held the cards.
Right. She held all the cards, and she wouldn't, and she knows me because we were, together for 7 years. She knows that I can't just cut something off.
Right.
Like, I need some sort of closure.
Yeah.
She never gave that to me. Like, that kind of sucked. And I think that's the main reason why those feelings still come up every year.
Because you never really had peace on it.
Right. Yeah. So that, that sucks. And I told you this the other night, which I think I talked to you about it. When she came home one night and we decided, after like a bunch of talking and long stories and all that kind of stuff, we decided, okay, it's probably best we separate with the intention of divorce. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That really sucked. So she left that night to go be with her guy that she was with. I'm left in this apartment. I'm like, I can't stay here because I'm surrounded by all this stuff.
Yeah.
Not in a good place. I just got to get in my car and go drive. So I went in my car and I started to go drive around Nashville. Spotify suggested this band for me that I had heard a few songs of before, but never really gave them a second thought.
Mm-hmm.
But the record "We're All Gonna Die" by Dawes came out that day. So I'm like, all right, well, that sounds pretty fitting for my life right now. Let me give that a listen. So I listened to the record, and it was incredible because I think 2 or 3 songs in, I believe it's the third track, is "Roll with the Punches."
Oh, yeah.
You know the song.
It's a divorce song.
It's literally a song about separation and divorce and the deconstruction of a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it blew me away because I'm like, I thought I was the only person going through something like this. And that's why, when people tell me, especially about the music that I make and the music that we make as a band in the band that I'm in each day, I was like, oh, some of your music is just so sad. Like, why would you do that? Like, why do you write music like that? Why? Nobody wants to hear that kind of stuff. Like, just write upbeat music that people could dance to.
I'm sorry, not all of us are country artists. I'll sing about a truck, a band, a cold beer, and a pair of jeans.
Yeah. I'm like, well, because that kind of sad music is the kind of music that, quite frankly, saved my life.
Right.
And it's like, if somebody is going through an event that they feel like they might be the only person going through that, and if I could tell my story and then they could hear that and be like, oh my goodness, I'm not the only person who's ever gone through something like that before.
Right.
It's the same thing with the song "Ditmas," which came out a year prior.
It's a great song.
And
in time.
Yeah, which tells my whole story. It feels like it does. There's a ton of music out there. Music, movies. I told you in, I think, whatever it was, like the second or third podcast about Wes Anderson movies really got me through that. Because they all have some sort of deconstruction of relationships in them. How important it is to tell your story in whatever way you can, whether that be sitting down with someone and just being like, yeah, this is my story. And if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. But, it's out there because you might be going through something similar. Mm-hmm. And if that's doing it in art, via film or TV or music or whatever it might be, I think it's really important to tell your story to people. Yeah. And these days, the danger in that, some people just don't want to hear your story. And if they hear your story and they don't like it, well, they shut you out of their life forever.
But I don't understand why that's such a, why that needs to happen.
I don't get it.
We all go through different things. Do you think that living a perfect life, and I think
people are so scared to be
yourself
broken.
Yeah. What's the problem with that?
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many people on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever you post that paints that picture. Like, look at my life, but they don't show you like the dirt and the mud that they go through to get to those points, or you don't realize that they're like, sitting crying and be like, I need to post a good photo of myself. It's like, and I think social media is so weird because we sort of grew up between like where we watched the birth of the iPhone. We watched like what it turned the world into.
Yeah.
And at one point, like, I just remember doing something like trend. It wasn't really like a trendy. I didn't really see it happen. It just kind of like happened. And I just remember like people started doing it too. Like it's sort of like how the internet works is like, one person starts doing something, it becomes a trend, and then it gets very trendy, and then people start doing it, and then so many people do it. And I just remember I was like, look at the power of all this. Look at what, like,
it's dangerous.
It's very dangerous. Like, look at what one, app can do for millions and billions of people.
Well, I mean, look at like today's politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's exclusively social media, and the information might not even be true, but because it's on social media, it has, a million retweets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh, well, that must be real.
Yeah.
That must be worth talking about. That must be something that I need to get involved in. And I think that's like why it's so dangerous, right? It's like our politics used to be for politicians. And, we were represented by those politicians.
Right.
Whatever you think of politicians out there, yes, there's a lot of corrupt politicians, but there's a lot of good politicians. And originally they were supposed to represent the people. Unfortunately, now they just have to tame the people, which is kind of what's scary. It's like, because if we don't like something, we're going to get on social media and we're going to complain about it and twist our politicians in order to get what we want.
People should be afraid of the government. The government should be afraid of the people.
V for vendetta.
V for vendetta. Which is true, I think, in a sense. Like, and whenever you're listening to this, like, politics are so hot right now. Like, as of right now, like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away a few days ago. The elections are in 2 months. And as in a month. A month from next Friday. Jeez. The next couple weeks are going to define, the next 4 years, and we're not really sure what path we're going to go on.
I mean, yes, I agree with you to an extent. I think some of the danger in that, though, is like people these days feel like, oh my gosh, whoever's in office is going to completely change the country. And yes, there will be small changes, no matter who's in office. And you shouldn't fear your other party possibly being elected or being elected again, whatever side you're on. When your decisions, and especially your vote, is based on fear, that's dangerous, right? Biden might be the next president for 6 days until he dies.
Or he's just going to forget he's the president.
And then Kamala Harris is going to be president, or Trump might be president again. We shouldn't be scared of the result.
Well, it was like what happened a couple years ago when Trump got elected. Like, people were like, oh my gosh, this guy could win. But no one wanted to, people were like, we need Hillary. But people were like, she's a criminal.
Yeah.
But Trump, people were like, we should not elect
Not just
Trump.
a criminal. Have you seen her laugh?
Yeah.
She might be Joker.
Yeah. I've got goosebumps. Yeah, so I mean, it's the same thing, but I think of it as, and I think some people might think it's like a naive thing, but like, Trump's not going to wake me up in the morning. Trump's not going to do my job. Trump's not going to pay my bills. Like, I feel like a lot of times a president will spend 2 to 2.5 years undoing what the last president did.
Exactly.
And then they get nothing done, and it actually makes things a lot worse for a while. So it is what it is, but the world keeps kicking and moving forward, and it's up to you really to...
It's up to the people to change this country, not the one person in office.
Absolutely. He just kind of controls the government to an extent. I mean, he's just a figurehead at this point.
Right.
How many advisors do you think he has in his board that's like, Mr. Trump, we shouldn't be doing that, and he's like, I want to delete Twitter and TikTok, okay? Pretty good.
Pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump. Hello, welcome. This is the Petrific Podcast, my favorite podcast. I'd actually be good in this podcast too.
We should try to contact him.
Yeah.
We should tell him like we're a huge podcast.
Be like Secret Service security everywhere. That would be crazy.
Oh man. Okay. Last thing before
Yeah.
we're done, based on this conversation that we're currently having,
Mm-hmm.
how amazing would it be if it actually happened that the debate was moderated by Joe Rogan?
Oh my gosh, I would literally pay whatever dollar amount.
That would be amazing.
If it was like pay-per-view, like $320, I'd be like, we're going halvesies, let's do this. I'd be like, let's go. He'd be like, welcome, Mr. President and Joe Biden. Have you guys ever done DMT? Excuse me while I light this joint. Hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the very last thing I want to talk about
Yeah.
is, I do think during the time of before we were all in relationships again, when we were all single, we did have some crazy times. I think we should have some happy thing to talk about during this podcast. Is there any good story that you could think of during the time that we were all single and super desperate for love?
I will say, like, because that was right at the height of our band.
Yeah.
We had just come back from Nashville, and we were like, well, we're all single. I think Joe wasn't. Yeah,
Joe was
wasn't.
on and off single.
with like 8 women.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll admit that. That was sort of like our gung ho, and obviously there are a lot of bad things that happened during that time because I was like borderline homeless.
I thought you were gonna say horny.
Well, yeah. So I felt like we really just took that. Like we were so driven. Like that year, 2018, we played like 250 shows.
Seriously.
Like we played so
Couple times a week.
Many shows.
Yeah.
Because I remember you were hell-bent. You're like, we need to play a show, 2 to 3 shows every weekend. And I was like, okay, I guess we can do that. And we did
might as well.
somehow.
We're all in the same place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we didn't know because I think Nick didn't move until that next year. And we had wrote a lot of momentum. We had built a lot of really good memories during that time.
Yeah.
And
What's one of your favorites?
From like the band or that year?
Anything.
I mean, any of the shows that were just obviously a lot of people were really fun. I think when we opened for Drake Bell from Drake and Josh at some small venue in Gurnee, not even Gurnee, it was like New Lenox or something like that.
It was up there.
Yeah, down there actually. I don't even remember where it was, honestly. Really good.
Yes.
Side, and obviously it was like, they're not there for us.
Right.
But we were actually.
But we acted like they were.
But that whole situation was super shitty too, because they're like, you guys are going to audition, and then we're only going to pick 2 bands. 9 people auditioned, and then all 9 made it.
Yeah.
Because the lady was like, I don't want to discriminate. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, come on. Clearly the band with 1 person sucked. She couldn't even sing.
She was great.
Yeah, whatever.
But it did suck because we were promised a 40-minute set to open for Drake Bell, and then she's like, well, all the bands are going to get 2 to 3 songs.
Yeah.
And we're like,
I think we got 4.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, because you guys were the best. I'm like, we're the most experienced. Everybody else was like teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but overall, that whole experience was really cool. And I think because we spent so much time like talking to the people out front and handing out stuff that it just sort of added to the experience. It really I just remember walking away from that. I'm like, I feel like a rock star.
And that's when we met Carly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who then created a fan page.
Started like a fan page for the band. We're like, this is crazy.
Yeah. I was like, what is Joe doing? I was like, no, this is Carly. We're like, what? Yeah. It was so fun.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite, it was a reoccurring memory because it happened so many times. We were under the impression that maybe if we went out to bars, we would meet people.
Yeah.
And
that's a good time.
We'd be like, okay. And at the time there was really nothing going on in downtown Plainfield, and we all lived. Nick and I lived around Plainfield. Colin lived in Naperville.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, let's we'll get dressed up. Mm-hmm. We'll go downtown Naperville. We'll meet some ladies.
The ladies.
With the lady. And, we'll have a good time and, hang out, whatever. We'd get to my house in Plainfield because that was the designated hangout.
I lived 5 minutes from downtown Naperville.
And we're like, no, Colin, you come over here first so we could all get dressed and hang out and act like girls before prom.
Yeah.
Everyone's there 8:30. We're like, all right, well, let's all take a nap because we can't go out until 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because apparently that's when people go out to bars.
Yeah.
So
stupid.
we would take naps on the couch. I would sleep on the floor because I'm a good host. I let my buddies have the couch.
Nick.
And then we would go out to the bars at 11 o'clock and come home with nothing to say about it.
Yeah.
Because we would just go downtown and we'd
Sometimes-
get like 2 or 3 drinks and then we'd be like, oh, well, no luck this time.
No, we wouldn't even get back at 3. We go out at 10 and we get like the early risers, the people that are like, oh, let's go to the bars. And I don't even remember talking to anybody.
No, we never did.
Anyone.
We
'Cause then-
expected people to come to us.
Yeah, no. Well, we were also in a bar and there was like 100 guys and like 4 girls.
Yeah.
So, and they're like with friends. So we did that.
We did get hit on by those cougars once, though.
Yeah, I repressed that memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, but we would like go out at 10. We'd leave by like midnight. Like we weren't out very long.
No.
And then we'd like go home, watch movies. We're like, oh, this is so sad.
Yeah, we're so lonely.
Yeah, good times.
Good times. Anyway, we're all happily in relationships right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just celebrated my 2 years. Your 1 year is coming up.
It's coming up next month.
Coming up next month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot to celebrate these days.
Yeah, it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah, I think if there's anything to take away from this, don't be afraid to talk about stuff going on in your life.
Yeah.
Right? With the people around you,
Mm-hmm.
surround yourself with good people and talk about your stuff because you never know who might be going through the same thing
Mm-hmm.
and you never know who might have already gone through that and can help you.
Right. I'm always a big advocate for seeking out help. You don't have to see professional help, but finding somebody that will just listen sometimes makes the difference.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we hope you all have a great week, and hopefully we'll see you here next week. Nice.
Hell yeah. Give it to me, Carl Douglas.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.